What's happening, everybody? As always, everybody out there in podcast land, it's the G-Man with Kel on What's the Matter podcast show. We are doing another remote thanks to the water heater, Kel. Oh my goodness, you are still going through your calamity. Let's let everybody know what's going on.
Oh my God, it's over now. It finally got fixed. I now have hot water after 2 weeks.
Okay, did you take a shower? Did you take a shower before the show?
Yes, I did. So good.
So now you have been vagabonding it, living hotel to hotel.
Hotel hopping, yeah.
Yeah, right. So anything like noteworthy happen? Any kind of good people watching that you were able to do? Anything stand out?
Yeah, despite how annoying and protracted and difficult this was, I was still blessed. I was so blessed because I had free room nights at Western Village and the Pepper Mill, which are two of our good casinos here in town. And so when it first happened 2 weeks ago, I just thought it was going to be a couple days, stay a little staycation up the street at Western Village, and it was nice. It was real nice. I hadn't had a reason to stay there since they had done the remodeling a while ago, and so it was very, very nice. The rooms are as luxurious as they are over at Peppermill. It's the same decor, and so that was nice. That was nice. That was Thursday 2 weeks ago, and came home and thought it was going to get dealt with, and it just went on and on and on. We found out the thing was dead, but it was still under warranty, so they had to do it a certain way through Home Depot, and that took extra time, and it kept dragging on and on and on. And then finally the new one came in yesterday, and they installed it, and it still wasn't working, and it turned out there was an electrical problem.
Oh my goodness. So there's one thing after another.
Yeah. I gotta say, God bless Pascal's Plumbing here in Sparks. They just stayed on it and bulldogged that thing until they finally figured it out. It took 2 different techs and 4 different visits, and they were great about it. And I really, really appreciate all of them, Jacob and Tiffany and everybody. I got to give them a shout out.
Well, good deal. You got through it. So
I did.
Now, do you remember what we're going to be talking about today?
Evolution.
What's the matter with evolution? And are we truly evolving or just fooling ourselves? And of course, as we talked a little bit about last week, this thought was prompted by watching this movie called Bugonia. I think that's the correct pronunciation of it. So we'll talk about that a little bit today. But first and foremost, let's give everybody their proper and due shout outs. Thank you first and foremost to World Matters Incorporated, the sponsor of our show, and creator and producer Big Bongo Productions. And we always give shout outs to KPGF 93.7 FM and their family of shows. You got the flagship America Matters, Nevada Matters, Jay Biggs, the Being Blunt with Jay Biggs show. He's moved to Saturdays, I believe, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. now. And let's see what else. Nevada Roundup, Kansas Bulls and Bears, State Your Case. There's all kinds of stuff. You guys check it out on the americamatters.us website.
Military Matters.
Yep. Military Matters, yep. And so let's talk about Begonia. So you didn't have the opportunity to watch the movie as I did, but we'll continue to riff as we normally do. But what did you?
I got a good rundown of it. I didn't get a chance to see it, but I did do quite a bit of reading about it.
Yeah. So what did
good idea?
What did you find? What's the synopsis?
Basically, these 2 guys kind of fall into a conspiracy theory kind of thing and kidnap this pharma CEO because they think she's an alien, and it turns out they're right. And
spoiler alert!
But it's more than that. I mean, that's the gist of it. But it's all the drama and complication and
Oh, you have no idea what you just did there. That's at the end of the movie. So you literally watched the entire movie thinking that these psychopaths, have kidnapped her, and you're, classic stuff. You're rooting for her to escape and wondering how she's going to do it and all these different things. And then, but yeah, you found out that, things were confirmed by the end of the movie. So sorry that cat's out of the bag for anybody that hasn't seen it, but I will definitely endorse it to check it out.
When anybody's begonias.
And they did, by the way, just checked it out. And so they got an 88% on Rotten Tomatoes. So I am not by myself in that evaluation, of course. And let's see. So as we normally do, my good friend, let's define evolution. And so that way, our listening audience can kind of grab onto the vibe that we're trying to talk about. So of course, point out, it's not biology class as far as the evolution goes. The evolution we're going to talk about behavioral, cultural, tech, things like that, and kind of spawn the conversation. Yeah. So let's talk about the behavioral evolution first. Again, talking about that, if we had a jury of outside visitors who came down and disclosed to us, hey, we've been watching you guys, and we're not too happy. We're thinking about pulling the plug, and you have one shot to prove your case that we shouldn't do it. Right. So that's kind of like the premise as we explore this. How are we going to do? How are we going to perform? Are we going to make it? Are they going to pop that bubble? So the first thing is from a behavioral evolution. Let's talk about specifically with our impulse control first. Okay. So what do you think? Are we evolving back from, of course, to some degree we have, no doubt, but to the point to where we're, hunters and gatherers back in those days, right? So hunters and gatherers. And so we're definitely, in order to be able to survive, the food, shelter, clothing, stuff like that, is a lot easier than it is nowadays. But as far as the impulse control with, let's say, primitive things, because that's where we would lose the alien, right? Not getting rid of our primitiveness. And so how are we doing on that, the Cain versus Abel, type of thing, which is, of course, the most violent form of that, taking someone else's life. So do you think that we're evolving now because of laws and constraints like that? What do you think?
Yeah, you have to think about it as, where we are today kind of societally, behavioral wise, like, expectationally, stuff like that, is relatively modern. It's a relatively modern construct.
Right.
Judeo-Christian and, through religions. So that's pretty much what religions were created for, is behavioral control.
Right.
And so, how we judge whether or not behavior is evolving or devolving or whatever, it really depends on your perspective. Because, are we evolving? Yes, I believe we are in consciousness, which is causing behavior to our perception of the way people are behaving, to thinking that it's devolving. And I think that can be looked at in different ways as more of us wake up, quote unquote, wake up and see what's really going on, how things really run, all of that, our behavior becomes less ordered, if you will. We stop complying with so many of the strict constructs, as we realize that, hey, we didn't choose this, and maybe this isn't still appropriate.
What about empathy?
And empathy is more of a personal thing. I'm talking more as, kind of higher up collectively.
Right. But have we evolved relating to empathy?
It depends. Again, I think all of this depends on perception and kind of from what direction you're talking about. Empathy in what way? Well,
in a general way, I think that, like, for example, let's say back in the day where, the caravan was coming across the plains trying to establish the Western Territory. And if there was somebody that was saying, my feet hurt, you know what I mean? There's not too much empathy, back then. And so, as far as like, being able to empathize with others, I would say that I don't know which term to use, whether softer or more empathetic, whatever. I think that the ruggedness that we had to endure as humans is not what it used to be. And so, yeah. And so from that, it's a lot easier to be empathetic nowadays because it's not as stringent, right? You get a little bit more flexibility.
Not only that, I think what empathy is the ability to put yourself in somebody else's experience,
exactly.
Their shoes, if you will, to feel what they felt in whatever they went through. I think a lot more of us, as we have, more and more communication and more, platforms to speak out on and share our experiences. I think a lot of us are realizing that we've been through similar things. So we have kind of an inherent ability to empathize.
Yeah. And just to round these off before we continue, so that behavioral evolution, just like we're talking about, how it has to do with impulse control, empathy towards others, maybe even discipline, right? We'll also talk about a cultural evolution, we as a society, as a species, how we treat each other and things like that. And then we're going to talk about also throw in some sprinkles of tech evolution related to the tools that we are privileged to have at this time in our humanity. And so a quick question relating to tools before we get into a little bit more of the Begonia plot. So do you think that our tools are now evolving faster now as a society, not as individuals? Are our tools evolving faster than our character?
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, some of them are, for sure. In ways that we can't predict, like we can't predict or control it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, yeah, I definitely think so.
Okay. Now, just so everybody knows, to the Begonia, we're going to basically use that movie and the premise, the plot, as a lens, right? And I have this little note here, Kel. It says no spoilers. And
sorry.
But you were just given a report on it, so it's understandable. So anyways, Kel said, two men kidnapped the CEO. They believe she's an alien, quite convincingly, as a matter of fact. And the reason that this matters today is because I picked up on, there were, of course, and we'll talk about this, there were facets of paranoia, which we kind of look at, say, people that are even diagnosed with, of course, schizophrenia. There are people that aren't diagnosed with schizophrenia, and they have certain forms of paranoia. First thing that comes to mind, not that it's not a valid paranoia, I guess, but, people that are extreme preppers, into the world, type of person.
Apocalyptic.
Yeah, and of course, I like a nice, juicy conspiracy theory. But people that are always, into that in every single little thing, you know what I mean? It's about stuff. So, fascinating, the characters that were in there. And there's also kind of like this addiction of at least a perceived certainty, right? My story is the truth. No matter what evidence can be contrary or whatever, or even they can't even admit that things could be subjective opinions, right? It's just this confirmation bias on steroids, right? And so if there were a jury, Cal, if extraterrestrial expectations existed, let's go down a little, kind of checklist, right? So what if one of the criteria that they have is that we want our not invention, but our concept of humanity, to have this emotional regulation. We want you guys to, as a group, part of who you are is that you have emotional intelligence, you have this emotional regulation. Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, collectively, where do you think we are right now as a species related to emotional regulation? What would our grade be?
On a scale of 1 to 10?
Or go A through F.
I would say C or 5, 5. Like, again, this is all a spectrum. And it's always kind of from what perspective you're looking at it. Now, I think
some people are
generally. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say some people are okay with C's. Yeah, we got a lot to talk about today, in spite of this very kind of vague premise that we're talking about here. Like A through F, people that get a C, I guess it depends on. Now you were raised strict. I know that a C wouldn't have stood very well in your household. Anybody that is striving to be the best, want to be the best, there's no way that a C would be okay with them. However, there are people that they're just like, I don't mind being average, or, but
Good enough.
yeah, it's not that important to me, and stuff like that. I really don't care. But for the people that do, let's talk about your grade of C, just like a teacher with a student with, parent teacher conference. Where are we falling short? Why are we getting a C as related to emotional regulation?
Because we keep fighting with each other instead of uniting with each other and fighting against the actual problems. We're buying into the bullshit. We're buying into the programs. We're buying into the agendas. We're getting sucked into all the traps they've set, and there is a they, capital T, that that people are just falling into instead of investigating and thinking for themselves and making choices rather than just going with whatever. And, people have forgotten that we are the 99%, each other's enemy.
Probably the biggest example of what you're talking about would be war. We're not being very, very nice to each other.
To do with, we the people have nothing to do with war. None of it. We don't have any. It has nothing to do with us. They just fund it off of our backs.
Except for the pawn part. You have to, just like chess.
Of course, our soldiers and stuff like that. But we don't. We have like zero play in any of those decisions. Whether we go to war, who we go to war against, what weapons are used, what resources are put to it, who's called forth. We are not in that discussion. Period. End of story. We're not considered in it. We're not part of it, and we never will be.
That's that. Just speaking truth on that. Now, on the other tip, what is, if we, versus an F, what are we doing right as far as emotional regulation? You know what I mean? That got us that C.
We're learning about it. I think we're learning a lot more about it right now. Like right now in the zeitgeist, there's so much information about narcissism and abuse and trauma and CPTSD and, neurodivergence. And we're learning a lot more about our own bodies and how they work. That is critical. That is critical.
All right. And then hopefully somebody will do something with the information, right?
Exactly. But just the fact that it's becoming so ubiquitous and being so sought out is encouraging. People are that's self-introspection. They're looking into what happened to them. That's, just the fact that people are even considering that, much less actually going out and putting effort towards it, is huge. That's huge evolution right there. That much self-introspection. We've never had it before.
So the next on our alien audit checklist is, how are we doing grade us out as a species with honesty and accountability?
Terrible. That and it's interesting because we're in a phase right now that's forcing a lot of that. That's what disclosure and revelations is all about, is, straightening up these corrupt systems that have been enabled all this, sliminess and all this ability to slide around and get around things and do things, in different ways, and made us look at, it's going to make us look at, okay, if we had to have so many loopholes, why did we have the laws in the first place? Are they still applicable? Do we need to change them? What is the end goal of all this loophole stuff? And is there a way to work through it legitimately rather than making people go corrupt,
Right.
So I think that's what's going to happen next. It's going to force us to, as these systems collapse, because, the people who are corrupting it are literally dying. We're going to have to examine that and, do hard things, and just some things are going to have to go away. Some things are going to have to change. Some things are going to have to get stricter. Some things are going to get looser, but it's going to be different. People need to be prepared for that. But it needs to be. This is what people have been calling for. But we've got to go through this, collapse phase first.
So did I hear you right? You gave us an F on honesty and accountability?
I'd say a D plus. I think a lot of us are trying. It's hard because we're coming up, but I think a lot more of us are, because we're coming up against such bullshit. More of us are speaking out, like straight up against it now. That fear of retaliation and their fear of exposure is greater than our fear of retaliation. So we're calling them out now.
Yeah.
We're calling stuff out like we never have, and that needs to keep happening. People need to keep speaking up on, if you see something, say something. And against the authorities, not each other.
Right.
It's not where you're looking at your neighbor, to catch your neighbor doing something wrong. You need to catch the so-called leaders doing, doing
which
wrong.
Which kind of leads into the next one on our alien audit checklist. So how are we as a society, as a species, doing with cooperation with each other?
I think,
again,
I'd say C minus, D plus again, because I think people want to, but the systems and distractions and crap that people are, the mindsets that people are falling into are further dividing people and making them kind of isolate. And people are questioning a lot of things in their lives right now too. A lot of relationships, a lot of habits, patterns, things they've done for decades. So there's a lot of shakeup going on, where people are doing work that they need to be isolated for. It's nothing that anybody else can really help with, other than being a sounding board maybe or a mirror. But it's nothing anybody can do for you, or they can just kind of support you. You really need to kind of go into isolation when you're questioning all these things and, changing relationships and changing behaviors and habits and things like that. It's very hard to do when you're surrounded by people and still in the same patterns. So I think that's kind of what we're in, kind of a phase of that right now. But I think people will start coming back together. They're going to have to, once everything does finally start falling apart. I think that's when people will snap out of it and finally go, okay, here now rubber's meeting the road. We don't have our comfortable, ways anymore. We have to work together.
That's when teamwork makes the dream work.
Absolutely. And I think people will realize very quickly, okay, I remember this, because we used to be very neighborly, and, Gen X grew up pretty much, in those villages that they talk about. And, but we remember that. And that's, I've always wanted to kind of get back to that as a society, but I've always been that way in my own communities. I live in a 55 plus condo complex. I, help my neighbors out. I cook, feed people, and, that's just what I'm used to. That's to me, that's humanity. That's being people. That's being alive. So I think we'll get back to that,
Hope so.
And I think a lot of the kids today haven't really been exposed to that as much. So I think once they do, they'll get that feel too, and they'll want that.
Cross your fingers. All right. Next on the checklist, our alien audit checklist, how are we doing with taking care of our house? We got this one planet, right? And so our stewardship, in regards to that, even with our, so as far as our resources primarily, but even with our health and, relationships and stuff like that, which spawn from that, how are we doing with the general stewardship as a planet?
Poorly. I'm going to say D minus on that one. And yeah, I think, they pushed it so hard as this big agenda and put so much blame on us, that we were the problem. And again, that's been uncovered. We now know that's not true. It's it's industrial waste, industrial pollution, data centers, all this other crap that really causes it. And us, recycling our water bottles and, buying, ethanol gas, it makes barely a difference. And I think a lot of people, once they realize that, they kind of gave up. So they're less vigilant about recycling, or less vigilant about, sustainability in general with their own day-to-day lives now, because the ones who are really causing the problem didn't change anything. So why should we? It kind of gets to that mentality.
The last one I have here is how are we doing balancing our need to over time gain wisdom as a species and as a society versus information overload, right? How are we doing? Like we've been talking about sifting through the signal versus the noise. How are we doing as a people?
I think that's really out of balance too, and I think that's a great point. That we've got more information. Information is free now; it's a commodity. Information is everywhere, but wisdom is being lost. And that's that dichotomy and that cognitive dissonance is tough. So same thing. Kind of.
We're not doing very good, Cal.
I think we could do a lot. I think we could do a lot better. I think we're capable of much more. I think we're in that kind of a heavy downward spiral right now. And I think it's tough. It's tough not to just want to go, oh, all right, well, everybody else seems to be, doesn't care. Why should I?
It's hard not to be cynical. It's hard not to be cynical of our prospects of pulling out of it.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Kind of like if it acts like a duck and quacks like a duck, type of thing.
Right.
That's why, when you do have to watch that movie. Because I'm telling you, Emma Stone did a great job. I can't remember the name of the other main actor. Just fantastic script writing, situational, type of stuff. I'm always like, a great movie, always makes you like kind of feel like you're there, right? You're this proverbial fly on the wall, right? They bring you in, and so this one it kind of did that, and so definitely check that out. But that sounds like a cricket.
I hear some crickets.
Well, you know what I did? It's your fault, because you suggested that when we do this, that we try to make the jokes about or around what it is that we're talking about. So today, what I did is it's been a long time since I've done this, but I have a pre-canned alien joke that I'm just going to push a button and it's going to do it. I have to say, Kel, like this is, I think it's a couple minutes long. So you're going to have to pay attention. And it actually has to do a little bit with, remember how we had the one show on ancient aliens, right? And so we have, in this joke, we have an ancient alien or part of the ancient alien that's actually having a conversation with the Pope. And he drops a mic. The alien drops a mic at the end. Okay, so here we go. Hopefully this will work. So this alien armada from a distant galaxy comes down to Earth. And they're friendly. And the leaders of Earth, the aliens, they plan a huge televised event where world leaders can ask any questions about whatever they want to the visitor. So during this event, the Pope steps up to the microphone and talks to the aliens. And this is his question.
I know this question may sound odd to you gentlemen, but I was wondering if you and your kind knew about Jesus Christ.
The alien leader replies,
Jesus Christ? How do we not? That dude swings by our planet every 2 years or so. Awesome guy.
Now, obviously, this starts this huge debate within the world and United Nations, as this information now has implications to everything that we know. The Pope, however, is not exactly a happy camper. He's not a happy person, as his brain is on other information.
Every 2 years, we've still been waiting for his second coming.
Trying to calm down the Pope, the aliens say,
well, maybe he didn't like your chocolate.
Upon hearing this seemingly unrelated comment, the Pope takes a few minutes to calm down. When he finally regains his composure, he states calmly,
forgive me, but...
Well, when he was on our planet, we would give him huge boxes of chocolates. Why? What did you guys do when he was here?
Did you get that?
That was a little weird.
There's a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It was, I know it's hard to, that's why, hey, it's like a little focus. It's a little focus test for you. A lot of stuff coming at you.
Probably would have been easier if we were in the studio together. I could actually see you
Exactly. And then I could have had, the different lines of the different ones and different. So that's the best I could do though. It did record the alien's voice. That was me with the special effect. And then the other ones I got the voice of the Pope. I got him off 11 Labs and stuff like that. But, we still got a couple more here too. Let's go through some riddles. Why do we call, remember how we talked about, and thank you for bringing that to my attention when Eric von Däniken passed away a couple of weeks ago, author of Chariots of the Gods and things like that, basically intelligent design. You got the channel on the History Channel, Ancient Alien Show and stuff like that. So why do we call the aliens who created the pyramids a conspiracy theory? Because it's obviously a pyramid scheme. Not bad. That one,
No, that's cute.
That's
cute.
That's a good one. And let's see, what else do I got here? Oh, kind of lurid. But what's the best way for you to see aliens having sex?
Oh, jeez.
You got to go to the website called Pornhubble. Oh man! So of Pornhubble, if aliens are monitoring our media, internet traffic, and as people state, 98% of the internet is porn. Do you know what that means? Is they're not here to give us anal probes; they're just trying to speak our language. That was a little risque. How do redneck aliens abduct people?
I don't know.
Tractor beam.
That's cute.
Last one. What do aliens spread on their toast? Space Jam.
Oh, jeez.
Okay, I'm not going to put you through anymore.
Technically, porn is only 4 to 12% of all websites on the internet. Just FYI.
See, it's another conspiracy theory.
98%. Yeah, that's a little exaggerated.
Somebody was being, exactly exaggerated.
Hyperbolic.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so let's see. So next block, I want to talk about, again, just continuing to see, are we evolving or are we just kind of upgrading our gear, right? Things that are making life easier. We're pretty close to, remember that cartoon, The Jetsons, with Rosie the robot? Yeah, we're getting a little bit closer to that. Robots and AI that can do particular chores around the house, but the way that it is now, you got to get a robot to do, to vacuum. You got to get a robot to do the dishes. They're not multifaceted. Yeah,
multidimensional.
But let's say, let's actually, talk about, the two speeds. Say going too slow, going too fast. Right there. As far as the tools that we now have, do you think that our tools for evolution are going too slow, or are they going too fast, and why?
I think they're going too fast, and because they're going beyond our physical understanding even of how they work in some cases. And I think that's dangerous.
You mean as far as the, kind of the mind programming aspect of it?
No, I mean just how they, how they learn and evolve from themselves and each other without our intervention, and the people running it not quite understanding exactly how that's happening and what it's going to.
You got to be talking about AI there.
Of course I'm talking about AI. But, everything else we're pretty well adapted to as far as tools go. Although the fact that it's still 2026 and you'll get people saying, "Oh, I'm computer illiterate. I don't know how to computer. I don't know how to work a computer." That boggles my mind. But you still find that. But I think putting this technology into physically actionable entities like robots, I think they're getting way ahead of themselves. And I think that whole thing needs to slow down and stay contained for the time being.
Yeah, when you think about, say kind of a bed of 10,000 years or so of evolution, and then the last 200 years, say since the turn of the 20th century, has just been incredibly fat.
Yeah.
Yeah, my grandmother on my dad's side, I think, passed when she was like 92, 93, something like that. And so when she was born and a little girl, there were no cars. It was still trains, horse and buggy, type of transportation, or walking, of course. And to see, of course, it come, past, the train and, the automobile invention, radio, television, seeing a guy go to the moon and, flight and all that stuff, it was just like, wow.
Right.
That, and so I don't think that we've been alive with such, even though, of course, the internet, was a game changer. I think that was part of the Department of Defense from something like the 50s.
Yes.
And so that had actually been here, for a long time before they gave it to us
publicly.
Yeah, well, exactly. And then, of course, as always happens with the, false flag operations, we're going to tell them this is going to be great. We're going to do it for them. But actually, it's a tool for them to be able to kind of manage the herd, so to speak. But so these tools are evolving fast. When you think it in those types of perspectives, it took all this time to get to like 1 billion people. And then we've got to 8 billion pretty much in the last 100 years, a little bit more than 100 years. I mean, so the explosion. That's an interesting thing as far as evolution goes, pertaining to the fertility rate that, according to reports and statistics, are going down.
Medical health too. It was medical health too.
But I mean, with 8 billion people, right? You've heard of the Great Culling, Culling, right? Okay. So in that regards, not being paranoid, but conspiracy theory, whatever you want to call it, word is that the optimal at this point in time, the optimal population for the earth would be 500 million people. There would be plenty of land, no little scarcity. And so how are they going to do that? Again, word is that poison, chemical warfare, different things like that. So I guess my point with all this is not saying it's true, but it could be. And, if it was true, then they don't really care about the fertility rate right now, right? They wouldn't.
Right.
And so anyway, that was a nice little side ramp there. But so let's get back to this kind of slow or too slow or too fast type of thing as far as our species goes. And so, not to be repetitive, but what do you think? I think I already know the answer to this. As far as our collective emotional maturity, have we evolved too slow? Or I don't think you would say by any stretch of the imagination that we're going too fast.
I think we've evolved very quickly. Just look at the women's movement. Look at how far women's rights have come.
Okay.
And how fast. And it was until 1974 women couldn't even have their own bank account or credit card. So I think we've evolved.
You're saying in the last 75 years. I'm talking about collectively over time.
Still, absolutely.
Okay.
I think that's been accelerated too. Sure. As we've had access to more information, and our consciousness has evolved. Of course, the rest of humanity, the rest of us are, our bodies and everything else go with it.
Now, from a humanity scaling standpoint, how do you think we are doing as far as, is it going too slow or too fast as far as a collective culture evolving unevenly? I mean, if it's understandable, there's different, of course, parts of the world that are totally different geographically, weather-wise. But if, say, the aliens said, we want you guys to be homogenous. It doesn't matter if you're in Antarctica or if you're in Australia. We want you guys to be connected to each other in regards to all these different things that we're talking about. So as far as a cultural, planetary culture, and as far as our evolution goes, are we going too slow or too fast as far as it just being obviously uneven at this point?
It's always going to be. It's not supposed to be even. That's a collective American delusion that everybody should all be one, and we should all. Coca-Cola, I think, came up with that. I'd like to teach the world to sing, and everybody, running up the hill holding hands. We're not supposed to be that way. No creator would ever they would never have given us free will if they wanted such limitations. We're here for experience. That's it. There's no, again, we humans created religion and these behavioral constructs for order. These didn't come from God or, all of that. God is a religious construct, just like anything else. Source, it's a source energy that created us. And all it wants is experience. Otherwise, we would never have had free will. But they put us in a duality construct for us to figure out how to evolve through friction. That's why up, down, right, wrong, hot, cold, yes, no. It's by going back and forth and working our way through the duality that we evolve.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I mean, so what you're basically saying that the culture evolves unevenly. That's the way it's supposed to be.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All right.
If the creator wanted us all the same, they would have made everything homogenous. They didn't.
Right. Well, hopefully, that's what I'm saying. Hopefully,
it's a video game. That's where the video.
Yeah.
I mean, go back to thinking of it as a video game. They put us down here and said, "Play, figure it all out. Here's you have me."
See, and the juxtaposition, like I was saying, is what if they wanted us to be homogenous?
If they wanted us to, and again, who's they?
This whole show's
there is no one.
This whole show's about if we had a jury of outside, space travelers that that established us here, and they've been wanting us to get to a certain level of humanity and evolution. And so far, we've gone over all these things, and they're,
they don't see. That's the other thing. There's no judgment out there. Judgment is a human thing. There is zero judgment.
Yeah. Well, in this, I did read.
Universe. Like they just observe and go, okay, that's what's going on there.
And I did read. And I did read some of the possibilities of what motivated the script writers in Begonia. There is a possibility that some of the stuff was a satirical approach also.
Yeah, I read it as a dark comedy.
Yeah.
What I read about it.
Yeah, where it's kind of, like a mirror of us, so, again, it'd be fascinating to have an interview with the director or the story writer where the script came from and stuff like that. But I guess we can kind of in that little section as that we as a species, we're, as compared to where we've been, not of course having been around during the days of Atlantis, but we are currently technologically advanced, but we're emotionally inconsistent at best, right? And so I kind of like to think that there are some signs, right, that we are evolving. For example, I don't know, just it seems, not everybody, of course, but it seems like collectively that there's just more self-awareness language, like we've been talking about boundaries, just being aware of trauma in your life, eventually getting to a level of understanding, just being more aware of what habits are and how they, kind of fulfill your destiny and things like that. So, and wouldn't you agree? I mean, it seems like as compared to when we were growing up, there's just a lot more of that around. There's more self-help books. You have more access to information that, if you really want to find it.
Well, the whole science of psychology has evolved as it has commingled with neurology and what we now understand about the body and brain and how it all works.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's helped a lot too.
Absolutely. Even more just like, again, it's to talk about your feelings, right? In the 70s, that just wasn't as accepted as it is now. It's like, it seems like we are just more open to growth and learning, again, collectively as a humanity than we used to be. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. But it was introduced back then, really the 60s. Is when modern psychology and psychiatry, because they were doing so much experimentation because it was unregulated back then, and they were able to do a lot of things that today are literally considered abuse and illegal, and found out a lot from it. You know what I mean? They got good data. The experiments were horrible, but they got good data from it, and it spurred a lot of brand new ways of thinking and exploration about how the brain and body works. So it really started in the 60s and then exploded, as it came more into education too, as it expanded into schools, and then they expanded it to specialties, and more students got interested in it, and then went out into the world and brought it out there, and then discovered more things as they brought on more patients and had more experience and personal observation, and then published papers and peer reviews, and it just kind of expanded organically that way.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's because of all the social media and stuff, but I don't know. It seems that, I don't know if it's virtue signaling or whatever that is, but it just seems like I see more visible attempts at compassion and repair amongst my fellow man. You still got a bunch of knuckle draggers
No,
out
I think
there.
that's great.
Yeah.
I think the more that should be highly encouraged.
Absolutely.
The more guys do that and get positive feedback from other guys, and then it spurs them to have that courage, the better and faster it's going to get. That's awesome, and we as a society need to applaud and encourage that. So that really gets reinforced, because it's uncomfortable at first, and everybody feels a little weird, but if everybody kind of side eyes each other and nods and goes, yeah, it's cool, everything's cool, you'll get over it a lot faster. And then, invite women into the process, and we'll applaud and go, yes, this is what we've been talking about the whole time. This is great. I think, a lot more discussion can open up instead of this all-out war we have between the sexes right now.
Right. Yeah, and there's, of course, things.
I think we're getting to it through that. I think because we're having this war, it's causing all of this stuff to come up to be dealt with. So it's actually a really good thing.
Yeah. And of course, as we just mentioned, signs of why we may be getting better, there's certainly glaring signs that we aren't, right? And so, I don't know if it's because of the invention of the phone and social media and stuff like that, where everything's at our fingertips, and you got this attention, collapse. Instead of just being humble, like Underdog used to say, be humble and lovable, You have to have this constant stimulation, the dopamine chasing, right? Outrage addiction. We've talked many times about the tribal certainty, confirmation bias, I'm right, you're evil, type of persona that collectively, there's the divide and conquer aspect of dividing the people is so obviously effective.
Yeah, and I think it's a lot more exaggerated, and we see it, so because we see so much of it online. But I think in real life, day to day, there's not nearly
100%
as much of it. You know what
100%.
I mean? Like once we actually, see each other in the store and out at the club and at the auto shop and whatever, and actually have real conversations, we're like, yeah, everything's cool, everybody's cool, it's all right.
Yeah,
it's just bullshit.
Yeah, I think you're right. I've traveled the country. That's exactly what you find when you're not talking about it, and you're just
right.
you're just again interacting as humans, not as political constituents. Then
Exactly.
things do change, and your perspective definitely is different. Let's see. Another little thing that I have is, how would I say this? That a sign that we aren't evolving as much as we can is it seems at times that we've gotten to a point to where we'll actually prioritize convenience over character. Now, not you, but I'm saying collectively as a society.
Oh, no question. No, well, we're designed that way as human beings.
Yeah.
And so that, in order to overcome that takes energy and effort. That's a conscious thing to realize, okay, my default is always going to be for the easy way. I need to consciously do harder things to keep that muscle up, to keep that strength.
Yeah, I knew G-Man and Kelvin talking about boundaries. I'm going to put some boundaries up, just like it's going to be called What's in It for Me. you know,
Absolutely.
so
Sometimes that's the question you ask. Sometimes it's like, what impact will I have in helping this other person or whatever, whatever criteria you use to make your decisions. But boundaries are very important so that you don't overextend yourself
yeah.
and lose. That's, if you are going to, go into a deficit, know that you're doing it consciously rather than thinking that it's going to benefit you somehow and then doesn't,
Yeah, I wish we've been talking about filters and kind of started with the signal, versus noise, being able to discern that. And I wish we, as a humanity, a society, could have this kind of internal mechanism collectively, where it's just like, should we be worrying about this? No, that's not a big deal.
Right. Like if we could have some way to kind of like just a collective heads up, kind of like lemmings, like we poke up and look around and go, yeah, is this a thing? Nah, not a thing. And then just go back to what we're doing. Like, is there some like network or communication or pulse frequency we can put out to kind of check in with each other and go, yeah, do we react or is this just more bullshit? Nah, more bullshit. Yeah. Nope, this one's important. Let's meet up at this town square. Yeah, that would be funny if we had like homing systems like birds do.
Or like a collective Rotten Tomatoes rating, based on real world, kind of situations, calamities or whatever. But because I mean, it does, being able to discern that. I mean, it's going to, we talked about a little bit about wisdom, so that's going to increase your wisdom, connecting with people. Because when you get a signal and then you say, okay, this is worthy of my time, then of course, then you need to invest your attention, to that person, and there's going to be a connection, or there should be. And of course, it's going to increase your competence, peace of mind. And then that noise part, like we talked about, it steals your attention, right? We have a limited amount of time, here. When you think about the time that we have here, about a third of it's sleeping. They had a breakdown one time. You set this much in traffic, you spend this much time taking out the trash. You start looking at these, just like, man, I spend a couple months doing that, a couple months of time, seconds at a time doing that. It's kind of mind blowing. But I digress. So what, I guess the question, to kind of move forward, I want to do a little bit of a lightning round with you here. And so, I guess the question is, again, about signal and noise. Is this, as a society, I wish that we could voice this. Is this helping us evolve, or is this just keeping us busy? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Is this helping us evolve, or is this just keeping us busy? Are elections helping us evolve, or is it just keeping us busy? Dang it. Whoops. Sorry about that.
Right.
Oh man. If people listen to the show, long enough, they'll be able to get a collective feeling of how we both feel, about different things. Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's do a lightning round here. And so just kind of comment. I'm going to have these one or two words. No, there's the last one is more than 4 words. But, very short word or 2 words. And then so you're going to comment on whether it means that we are evolved or it means that we have not evolved. Okay. Got me? Okay. So the first term is evolved or not evolved ghosting.
Not evolved.
Why?
Because that's wimpy shit. That's pussy crap. Like, if you can't just have a conversation with somebody and say, hey, I'm not feeling this. Thanks for the time. It was good to meet you.
Lose my number.
Yeah. Now I will say ghosting someone abusive is appropriate.
Like describe abusive, like the obvious abusive,
where you're at threat in any way.
Oh yeah.
Verbally, physically, sexually, emotionally, financially, whatever. If you're in any way threatened by this person, ghosting is appropriate. Gotcha. Other than that, if you're in like a normal dating situation, a normal friendship situation, now if it just sort of tapers off on both parts, that's one thing. But if somebody, that person is interested in you and thinks this is going somewhere or whatever, and you just don't, and you don't want to continue, don't lead them on, and don't just disappear.
Yeah, I got
I think
you.
at the very least you can just say,
Yeah, gotcha.
thanks, but no thanks.
All right. Evolved or not evolved? Public shaming.
I'm going to say that is situation case by case.
You can't. You got to call one. Evolved or not evolved. It's a jury of outside intelligence.
I think sometimes it's necessary and effective.
Mm-hmm.
So, evolved or not, I don't know if that's even part of the question. I think it's just human. I think it's just something,
Well, remember,
I mean,
these aliens are
public square with tomatoes and stockades.
Yeah, remember these aliens are judging to see if they're going to pull the plug or not.
I think they would see that. I think they would see that as an appropriate way of dealing with certain consequences, a certain form of punishment.
So no matter what, there's no way that there could be a species of human, society, global or otherwise, where there wouldn't be any need for laws, because everybody knows like the things that you can and can't do. That's just an impossibility.
I don't know about laws per se in like a strict quote unquote legal construct, but yeah, having rules and structure. I mean, the universe has laws,
right?
So yeah, that's a thing. You have to, in order to have any kind of order and structure. Otherwise it's anarchy.
I love it. Okay, now evolved or not evolved? Apologizing.
Absolutely evolved.
What about boundary setting?
Evolved.
What about doom scrolling?
Unevolved.
Not evolved? Or
No,
evolved?
Definitely not.
Okay,
No,
doom
definitely
scrolling is not evolved. And then choosing sleep over drama.
Definitely evolved.
Right?
Oh gosh, yes. Choosing sleep in most cases is going to be a number one choice.
Exactly. All right, so let's talk about like E.T. Do you remember watching E.T.?
Of course.
Yeah, right. Did you watch that movie more than once?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I saw it in the theater more than once, and then of course it would come on. It used to come on TV every year, and then video. Oh yeah, many times.
So
It's been a while, but yeah.
When you watched it as a kid, what do you remember as a takeaway? As a kid, or how old were you when you saw it? When was that? Wasn't that?
Jeez.
Was that in the 80s? That was in the 80s, huh?
Yeah, I think so.
Late 80s.
Late
No, it wasn't that far back.
82. Yeah, June 11th of 82.
Yeah.
So I would have been 14.
Yeah, so that's
And
perfect. So what was your takeaway when you saw it for the first time or second time?
I remember feeling like the empathy I felt for the alien was palpable. It was like visceral.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was like, yes, me too. I want to go home too. And I related to it because I was obsessed with that speak and spell toy that they used to do the phone home thing.
Oh yeah,
I had one of those, and just I was obsessed with that thing. That and Merlin was the other one I had. I was big into electronic games, Simon, and all these games. And so yeah, I felt very connected to the alien. It was weird.
Okay.
I did in Star Wars too.
Okay. So here's the gist. The reason I grounded you with ET is because now I want you to put on your adult hat, knowing with your history of ET being a part of your childhood, and now again knowing a little bit about conspiratorial psyops. And so again, the premise of what if they were just planting these little seeds in Kel's head that that there's aliens out there, but we just don't want to tell everybody yet.
Well, they've been doing that since the 50s.
That's right. So flash forward now, okay, because the premise of today is there's a jury, right? And so what's going to happen is I'm going to play the role of E.T. I'm not going to sound like him. Elliot. That wasn't bad, I guess.
No, it wasn't.
I'm going to be E.T. and he is an attorney in the jury in the trial. Okay. Now you know what you're going to be? You are going to be the attorney for humanity.
Okay.
Isn't that fun? Okay, so now
Yeah.
remember, I'm ET, and so you have to get over that because this is a serious matter. So here's the first question. As ET, the alien, and you as humanity's attorney, Ms. Rush, why do humans lie when truth would simplify their lives?
It's usually to cover up some perceived personal deficit that they don't want exposed.
Wouldn't humans want to get rid of their shame when the
They don't
truth would get rid of
realize
that?
They don't know it. They don't realize that. It's all subconscious and implanted early on. It's a reaction.
Next question, Ms. Rush. Why do humans confuse attention with love?
Probably because of the biochemical reaction that happens in the body.
Go
I
on.
think it sets off, it's depending on the type of attention and, it feels like acceptance. It feels like being wanted. It feels like, I think we misinterpret those feelings in our body as what we've been told love is or shown.
Can they do anything about it?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. You become aware of it and you just reprogram it. But that's the key, is being aware that this is your pattern and interrupting it when it happens and then diverting it to
Why do
different
humans
response.
why do you humans punish people for changing their minds?
Because it upsets our perception. It upsets our expectation. It's a retaliation. Again, all this is subconscious, unconscious.
I understand. Last question, Ms. Rush. Why do you humans worship convenience but complain about emptiness?
That's kind of how we're built. We are biologically designed for efficiency and ease and comfort. And we have to consciously, mentally challenge that to grow. That's just how that's how humans are designed. That's how this thing works. But it's hard. Not a flaw, not a flaw at all. It's just part of the design. That's how, that's how our evolution happens, is through friction and resolving. Problem, resolve, problem, resolve. Nobody ever promised us that this would be easy. We came up with that. And we kept trying to find ways to make it easier. And now we've gotten into a situation where, wait a minute, we still need to do hard things, but we conditioned ourselves into this, this swampy ease and comfort. And now we have to do hard things again, and we're not prepared because somebody stopped watching the chicken coop and let the foxes in, and now the infrastructure's falling apart and has to be fixed.
Okay, Ms. Rush, thank you very much for your answer to the questions. You can now go see and we'll call up another witness. No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, interesting stuff there. So back to Begonia. So what do you think? What's the line between? So thinking about again the plot, right? So besides the obvious. So let's say somebody is into these conspiracy theories about saying, I think there's aliens here. I think that they go back and forth under and use our oceans at 75% water. I think there's underwater caverns and this, just like whatever, Avatar, or what was the other one? Was it Avatar? Or no, Star Wars. Star Wars even went down there and stuff. So, but kind of having this curiosity of the what if, I wonder if, I'm going to go visit Area 51 and all these different things. And then having a delusion that drives you so far that you go kidnap somebody, because you think that they're an alien, or having the delusion, let's say you want to start a church and you're teaching all this stuff like that happened. I can't remember the particular name of it, where they all, took the poison thinking that they were going to get transported to the mothership.
Jim Jones. Hail Bob.
Yeah. Those people down in SoCal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So how do we make sure that we don't blur the line between curiosity and delusion from a practical standpoint?
Well, and that's getting harder and harder, and AI isn't helping that.
Oh my
And
goodness, yeah.
cultism is there's all kinds of, when you think of cults, people think of Jonestown or the Moonies or Scientology, the real big ones, but there are hundreds of small, cults that are just as dangerous, if not more so. Heaven's Gate was that Hale Bopp cult.
Oh yeah.
Thought they were going to ride the comet.
Yep.
Their purple sneakers.
Didn't they have jumpsuits on too?
Yes, and that's the thing. I mean, it just goes to show how easy it is to fall into delusion if you are vulnerable to such things, and more people are becoming vulnerable like that as they become isolated, as there's access to more rabbit hole type information of things that are going on, and a lot of it's not even provable, but it's plausible, and so there's a lot of questions right now that are causing people to get really off balance and fall into these, like we talked about, before, escape from esoterica. I'm writing a book, and it's, because of the rabbit holes I went down. I didn't get sucked into any cults or anything like that, but just the rabbit holes I went down, and information I found and stuff like that, and then people I had found that had pretty much gone off their rocker with some of this stuff and weren't able to lead normal lives. And now AI psychosis is another big contributor to this.
Yeah, I would imagine that before it gets that far, just like habits, there are patterns, right, that a person would have. And so what would be a good, again, line distinction of pattern recognition, so to speak, just recognizing your own patterns and things like that, and between that and paranoia? Like, what's that middle part where if you get there, you're just like, oh shit, I need to, press the brakes a little bit on this, or maybe get some help?
Yeah, if you are finding yourself like not participating in normal day-to-day activities, not going to work, not showering, following orders from some, alleged leader or guru, or, doing things you wouldn't normally do just because this group sanctions it, giving money or possessions, or making, major life decisions based on things these people say. A perfect example of that is this African preacher a couple months ago that said the rapture was coming and Jesus was coming, and people sold all their stuff and quit their jobs and gave up their pets, and, literally thought some guy was going to float down out of the sky and take them to heaven.
I did not hear about that.
Oh, you didn't? Oh my God, yeah. This was back in October.
I've been busy.
Yeah, some African preacher called, said he knew for sure the rapture was going to happen Wednesday, and all these people and stuff. And then he was like, oh, it didn't. When of course it didn't happen. Yeah. He was like, oh wait, God forgot that we're on the Julian calendar now. Or the Gregorian calendar, not the Julian calendar, or whatever. It's actually next Tuesday. And then of course it didn't happen. And it's just like, how do people get caught up in this kind of stuff? How desperate do you have to be, and how much of a lack of accountability do you want over your own life to have to, fall into this kind of thing, and it's just,
So what do you think? What do you like better, to follow your intuition, or do you have more of a kind of a certainty addiction? You like to know before you post something or advocate for something?
I like to know. I like to know. I try to do as much due diligence as I can before. Yeah. Otherwise, I have, like a YouTube channel and a Facebook, be out there posting content all the time. But I'm so anal about, what I say being accurate and not wanting stuff to come back to bite me, that I prefer not to put stuff out there, because so much of it is.
Yeah, that's not a bad thing. Kind of, we spoke about having some practical tools, and so how to evolve this week, just real quick. three real quick micro upgrades. And we've talked about this before. First, pause before reacting. And this is for a week. So just kind of like, pause before reacting. Maybe focus on asking one better question. I always kind of pet peeve, when somebody asks a question that they could have answered themselves. You know what I mean? So just make sure that when you're in a position of asking questions, just make one better question. And here's an interesting one. Tell one uncomfortable truth kindly, right? We talked about Johari's window a few episodes back, where people have these blind spots. And so how could you help somebody out by letting them know about something and doing it kindly? Maybe maybe in all avoidance and just to make sure that all bases are covered. Maybe it's just, slipping them an anonymous note, kindly written, so that way there's no fallout of any kind. I like that idea.
Yeah. Hey, just wanted to let you know, or, thought you might want to know, that kind of thing. I'd want to know if.
All right.
There's another way to approach that.
Exactly.
It's kind of like, pulling like a little piece of white something out of somebody's hair, Like I get mad when I get home and like I've got mascara running down my face or a thing in my hair. And like, why didn't somebody tell me? I always do if I see that,
Exactly.
Toilet paper on your shoe, that kind of thing. Your shoes untied. Like I'm like, we're in this thing together, folks. We're here to help each other out.
Exactly.
And when usually, but like whenever I do it for people, they're always like, "Oh, thank you, thanks for telling me." They're never like, "Oh, why'd you tell me that?" Nobody ever retaliates on you for it,
Or very rarely. And you're like,
Yeah.
I'll never do that again.
Yeah.
Never make that mistake.
That's usually like if you correct somebody, correct their grammar or something, they feel insulted. But if you, tell them, here, this might embarrass you, let me pull it out of your hair or whatever, they're all great.
That's right. So, hey, we're about ready to get into this last block here. But before we do, just to remind everybody, we are talking about the fact that I saw this movie Bugonia a couple of weeks ago. And it kind of begged the question, if we had some sort of jury of outside intelligence that were judging us as a humanity, how are we grading? How are we doing? Are we going to make it? Or if they decided to burst our bubble, you know what I mean? We had to kind of make our case. That's what Kel and I are doing today. So in let's see, this last part of block 3, let's go into what's the verdict. What do you think, Kel? Let me ask you a few questions here. You just go thumbs up or thumbs down and say why real quick. And so the first statement is humans are evolving, just slowly. Thumbs up or thumbs down?
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
Yeah, we're definitely evolving. Like we feel like we go up and down and up and down and up and down.
Yeah.
And stay in the same spot. Like when we go up to the same spot, and go down, we fall down to the same spot, back and forth, back and forth. That's not true. It's on an axis. It's on an upward axis. So every time you go up and down, the next time you come down, you're up further on that axis than you were when you started.
Oh, it's like
time you go up in
the
that
stock
cycle
market.
and down. Exactly.
Speaking of that statement, thumbs up or thumbs down, technology is making us less human.
I would have to agree with that right now too. Yeah.
Now, why do you say that?
I think a lot of people are hiding behind it and, saying and doing things that they wouldn't normally if they didn't have a more anonymous cloak. Or, I think there's getting to be a fine line between, human and transhuman as more and more of our lives get pulled online and talk of digital dollars and social credit and all these systems that we really need to be fighting against and keeping from happening. At what point, do those things merge?
Here. I like that. How about this one? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Most people don't want truth. They want to be right.
Yes. And I don't think it's always been that way, but it absolutely is now.
Yeah, which means that of course, the antithesis of that, it would be that they don't like being wrong. But I guess where is it in the evolution that you can't learn things by being right all the time, which has a thread of truth to it, right?
Right, that's true.
Being able to have the self-esteem to be able to admit when you're wrong, and then also as a tool
And the curiosity to take the lesson too, not just go, oh, I was wrong and move on. You go, I was wrong, but why?
right,
And
exactly.
then incorporate that lesson into your next expression.
Exactly. Thumbs up or thumbs down. We as a species are becoming more compassionate.
I'm not sure about that one. I think our capacity to be more compassionate is increasing, but our expression of it at the moment is not.
That's a good distinction. Thumbs up or thumbs down. We have confused freedom with impulse.
Absolutely. Freedom takes a lot of responsibility. And of course, impulse is, the utter opposite.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of that. These last few
Big
months,
time.
for sure. Okay,
Yeah.
last one
In
before.
the name of freedom.
Yes, last one before moving to the final block. If aliens existed, they'd avoid us. Thumbs up or thumbs down.
It depends on what they want from us. We want to personify and humanify everything, anthropomorphize everything, and think that aliens would automatically, be better versions of us. And I don't think that's how it works.
Yeah, I would on this one right here, just to chime in on this last one, if aliens did exist, to me, it makes sense under this premise that they would avoid us. Because again, they're in observational mode, so to speak. Yeah, they're in observational mode. And again, of course, it just lends credence, to the documented parts of our history where people claim, to have been abducted and the things that have happened and things like that, so fascinating. Okay, so this last block here, let's go riff off of some of these matters of fact. And if you dispute them, then do your little magic and research and tell us why they're not a matter of fact. So, life coach hat. Okay, so stress pushes people into old patterns. Why?
Again, that's a biophysiological thing. It sets off chemical loops in your body that you don't consciously respond to unless you're purposely trying to become aware that it's happening and really paying attention. But typically, your body's designed to go into those habits because of that's just how we're designed. It's fight or flight syndrome or fight or flight response.
Go with what you know.
The body just does that automatically, due to programming in certain situations. That's why triggers are so important to recognize, that way when certain triggers come in, you train your body not to react to them, because it's like, okay, no, this isn't a threat. This isn't a threat. This isn't a threat. It just makes me mad or whatever.
What about this one? Okay, so paying attention to how much you sleep, your quality of sleep, affects impulse control and empathy. We'll talk about why.
Absolutely.
That matter of fact. Why does that? Besides the obvious is that you're just too tired to focus, you know what I mean? But consistent sleep attention, yeah. Why does that help your impulse control and empathy?
Biologically, sleep is your repair and recovery time for your body. It's when it basically does the accounting for what you've done the day before and all of that. And so that's when all your lymphatic systems are cleaning things out, and drainage and cells and macrophages and all this stuff is, it's basically resetting itself while you sleep, because it's not having to expend energy keeping you alive and awake. So when you don't get enough, you don't have the energy, the resources to respond properly, and you tend to react more.
Gotcha. All right. Now, what about this one? Matters of fact, culture, or I guess you could substitute humanity, mankind. Culture follows incentives. Now, before you comment on this, so I don't know, we've been watching more movies than normal the last couple of weeks. So there was a remake of The Running Man. Remember the old movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, game show, type of thing. So that was still same, but there was a little twist to it where the Running Man was turned loose, and he had to, I think it was 30 days. He had to not get caught by 30 days, and where everybody in society has this incentive, to find him, turn him in, and things like that, because they get this reward. So first, is that true that a culture is going to follow incentives? Not as extreme as what I just mentioned, but
I mean, humans are going to follow incentives, and culture will be created out of that. You know what I mean? I mean, culture is a result and of patterns of behavior within a collective, basically. I think
that's how black markets are made.
That's how markets in general are made. I think humans operate based on incentives more than anything else. Either incentives or avoiding punishment.
Okay. Last little section here. Let's look at this. It's kind of like what we were doing earlier, an evolution scorecard. And so rating ourselves as humanity, final argument in front of the jury of the outside intelligence on a scale of 1 to 10, rate humanity on self-control as a group.
I would say pretty darn good. We don't have mass murders every day. We don't have, shootings in the, I think we have quite a bit of self-control compared to how people actually feel in a lot of cases.
As far as acting out, somebody wanting to act out more.
Yeah. Yep.
We have self-control.
Yep. And again, whether it's because of, incentive or lack of punishment, I would give it probably an 8, 7 to 8.
That's a glowing grade from you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. On a scorecard ranked from 1 to 10, how are we doing as a group, as a humanity, with honesty?
Again, relatively good because we're forced to be in a lot of cases. I think, the things that we're less honest about are more personal rather than outward, like deceptive lying,
I like that.
Scamming people or stealing or whatever. I think the things we lie most about are our own personal feelings, characteristics, fears, insecurities, whatever.
That's a great distinction. Do you know why? Because I have a note here to mention that exact thing.
Interesting.
The person that we are the least honest with is ourselves. That's what I wrote down.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. So what was the scorecard on honesty, 1 to 10?
I'd give that, speaking, are we honest collectively? I would say, again, same thing, probably 7 to 8, 7 now.
Now, what happens if you factor out politicians? Doesn't that number go up?
Big time, yeah. I mean, politicians.
Oh man, I'm going to have to chide myself. That's 2 times I think I referenced that unprovoked, today. So yeah. Okay.
There aren't as many of them. I mean, there aren't many of them.
7, 7, or 8, and then 7. Okay. So now the next one, scale of 1 to 10, as a group, as a species, how are we doing with curiosity?
I think pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to say probably about a 7 on that too.
Okay, that's better than I thought.
Yeah, I think people are curious about a lot of things. They may not ask as many questions outwardly, but I think people are a lot more curious than they let on.
Okay. Where are we at scale of 1 to 10? We talked about this a little bit, but I don't think we put it on the scale. As a species, as a group, with compassion.
Probably 6.
Yeah, we could do better. I agree with that.
Yeah, we could definitely do better. But I think we're kind of in a correction phase of, a lot of us are coming out of people pleasing, and in order to do that, you have to consciously have a little less compassion for people that didn't deserve it. I think a lot of that is coming out.
I was just
you
getting
know,
ready to say
as
that.
people are readjusting.
Sorry. I was just getting ready to say that because it seems like the reason, maybe I'm speaking personally, the reason that there aren't more compassion is because the people that kind of, take care of business, right? You take care of business. And then when you kind of find out how another person didn't take care of business when they had the choice, they had the choice, they had the same capability, they may have had it easier, so it's a little bit more difficult to have compassion. I mean, in that way, for somebody that you don't perceive deserves it,
Right.
if you could see that they saw the error in their error, the error of their ways, and they were now working hard, vested, and working towards never going back there. Now you deserve some compassion, because I can see the action towards, you want to change your life. But as long as you continue to be mired in your continual, habits of destruction, it's just, hard to be compassionate. I don't know. That would be an interesting one to learn from the aliens, I guess, of how to cross that bridge.
Well, I think that got us into a lot of this problem. We had too much compassion for people that abused it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? They just they took, everything and did nothing to help themselves get out of the situation that victimized them.
Right.
They weaponized their victimhood, and people got tired of it. We're just like, okay, that's enough. We can only give so much before that well runs dry. So it's understandable.
For sure. Now, how are we doing score? What did you score compassion? You gave that a 6. Okay.
That's 6. Yeah, it's 6.
And then where are you at with responsibility? 1 to 10 as a species.
Ugh.
Where are we at being responsible? Which means responding with ability.
Yeah. I'm going to say low. That's pretty low. Faltering. I'm going to be generous and say 4 to 5 maybe, but I'm not even sure.
Now, where are we?
Yeah,
where are we most lacking in the area of responsibility? What are we not being responsible with as a species? Our resources?
Our own healing in a lot of cases. I think, looking at our own, rather than pointing outward and blaming everything else and looking outward for saviors and somebody else to do something, I think people, need to look inward. The whole be the change you want to see in the world thing. I think a lot of people say that and don't understand what that means. That means that if each one of us actually makes the changes that we wish everybody, that we're saying everybody else needs to do this and everybody should do this and shitting all over each other. If we actually just do those things and make those changes, each one of us, things collectively get better. And that's how. Not everybody pointing fingers at everybody else saying you should.
Yeah.
No, we should. And it's when you can look inward and go, okay, what do I need to be doing, instead of looking at it, even looking at how can I help everybody else do what they're supposed to be doing. No, that's a distraction from what you should be doing. We all have our own missions and responsibilities and whatever in this life, and so many people just want to run from it. We all have to take out the trash. We all have to clean the toilet. We all have to, that stuff still has to get done, no matter how many dreams and hopes and goals and plans we have.
This is true. All right, last one on the evolution scorecard. Scale of 1 to 10, where are we at as a species related to relationship repair?
I think we're learning. Again, we're in the it gets worse before it gets better phase. We're learning about this. I think it's a relatively new concept to a lot of people, especially men. And it's, as people understand the concept and learn the techniques and learn, how it works and what it is and all of that, it gets better. But I think we're kind of in that initial confusion phase.
What's your
Probably 5.
Okay.
I think people are opting more to walk away from relationships right now than try to repair them. I think they're realizing they can't be repaired. And I
Mhm.
think that's why we're in kind of right now where it feels like everybody's against everybody else, but I think it's as they're realizing who they are and what they really want rather than what they've been conditioned through and are making changes that are uncomfortable, everybody's kind of acting out. But it'll settle down once people come into going, okay, this is how it's supposed to be. I've just never seen it this way because my parents didn't model it, my grandparents, my friends, whatever. And now that we're seeing each other do it better, we learn.
Yeah. Well, we started out hot with an 8 on self-control, but our overall average is 6.5 on a scale of 1 to 10. Kel, according to your grading
Slightly above
curve.
average.
Yeah, under
That's just
self-control.
my opinion.
Of course, but that's what makes it fun. Now, girlfriend, that's all I got, for us today. Any kind of closing thoughts before we wrap up episode 36?
That was another fun one. I love talking about all this existential stuff.
Yeah,
Evolution and where we are. We have a unique perspective here as Americans too, that we don't get exposed to a lot of the way the rest of the world thinks, and we think everybody thinks like us, which just isn't true. So that's, to me, it's just all about how many different perspectives can I look at something from before I decide what mine actually is.
yes, I love it. All right. Well, that's what's the matter. And so if evolution is real in our daily lives, it shows up in the most boring places. It's how we speak, how we're triggered, what we do when nobody's watching, whether we can choose meaning over impulse. And we don't need to be perfect humans, just humans getting a little more aware of our behavior as individuals and as a species. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But hell yeah. So big thanks to World Matters Incorporated, Big Bongo Productions, and a shout out to KPGF 93.7 FM. Next week on episode 37, talked about it a little bit. It's going to be What's the Matter with Coliseums? Now, what we're going to contrast is modern spectacles like UFC, football, hockey, and compare those with the ancient world of gladiators and the human appetite for brutality. And so why do crowds love violence? What changed? What didn't? From history's greatest entertainers to today's civilized versions, what does it say about us? And are we evolving? See what I did there? But hey, I'm the G-man for Kel. So as always, stay curious, stay kind, make sure to do your part, and evolve with purpose. Till next week, episode 37. See ya.